Diesel Rodriguez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stood in the parking lot of the Red Rock Resort in Sedona. The Arizona sun was setting behind the towering red cliffs, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that tourists paid hundreds of dollars to photograph. But Diesel wasn't looking at the sunset. He was staring at his phone, scrolling through the daily sales reports from Fuego's Kitchen, his restaurant back in Phoenix. "You're supposed to be relaxing," he muttered to himself, shoving the phone into his pocket. This was supposed to be his first real vacation in 3 years. 3 long, exhausting, beautiful years since he had taken every penny of his savings, plus a loan from his uncle Roberto, and transformed a rundown diner on the wrong side of downtown Phoenix into something special. Diesel remembered the day he first walked into that abandoned restaurant. The previous owner had given up after 6 months, leaving behind broken equipment, a grease-stained floor, and walls that looked like they hadn't been painted since the 1980s. Most people would have walked right back out. But Diesel saw something different. He saw families gathering around tables, the smell of his grandmother's recipes filling the air, and the sound of laughter mixing with sizzling pans. That vision had cost him everything. His comfortable job as a line cook at a fancy hotel downtown, his weekends, his social life, even his relationship with his girlfriend who got tired of dating someone who smelled like onions and fell asleep on a restaurant booths while reviewing inventory sheets. But it had been worth it. Fuego's Kitchen wasn't just successful. It had become the heart of the neighborhood, the place where birthday parties happened, where first dates either bloomed or died, where the elderly Mr. Chen came every Tuesday for lunch because his wife had passed and he didn't want to eat alone. So, why couldn't he enjoy this stupid vacation? Diesel walked back to his hotel room, a nice suite that his restaurant manager Patricia had practically forced him to book. "You need this," she had said, waving a printed confirmation like it was a prescription from a doctor. "We've got everything covered. The new servers are trained, the kitchen is running smooth, and I've been managing restaurants longer than you've been alive. Go, rest. Remember what it feels like to sleep past 5 in the morning." Patricia was right, of course. She was always right. At 62, she had more restaurant experience than half the culinary school graduates who applied to work at Fuego's. She had joined him 6 months after opening, when Diesel was working 18-hour days and making rookie mistakes that could have sunk the business. Patricia had walked in during the lunch rush, watched him struggle with a backed-up kitchen and overwhelmed servers, and simply started helping without even asking for an interview. "You need me?" she had said matter-of-factly. "And I need a job where the owner actually cares about the food and the people. We can help each other." She had been his right hand ever since. If anyone could handle things while he was gone, it was Patricia. But something felt wrong. Diesel couldn't put his finger on it, but there was an itch in the back of his mind that wouldn't go away. Maybe it was the way the last few daily reports had seemed a little too perfect. Sales steady, no incidents, everything running like clockwork. In his experience, restaurants were never that smooth. There was always something. A temperamental oven, a difficult customer, a server calling in sick at the worst possible moment. He tried to distract himself. He went for a hike in the morning, visited an art gallery in the afternoon, even treated himself to an expensive dinner at a restaurant with a view of the Red Rocks. But every few hours, he found himself checking his phone, looking for updates from the restaurant, waiting for Patricia's evening text that everything was fine. By Tuesday evening, the feeling had grown into a full-blown anxiety that sat in his chest like a weight. He was pacing around his hotel room looking at the beautiful view and feeling like a caged animal. The rational part of his brain knew he was being ridiculous. The restaurant had been running perfectly for months. His staff was solid. Patricia could probably run the place better than he could in some ways. But Fuego's Kitchen was more than just his business. It was his baby, his dream made real. Every table, every recipe, every employee had been carefully chosen and nurtured. He knew the sound the walk-in freezer made when it needed maintenance, the way the front door stuck when the weather was humid, which regular customers liked extra spice, and which ones couldn't handle even mild salsa. "This is crazy," Diesel said out loud, but even as he said it, he was reaching for his car keys. The drive from Sedona to Phoenix usually took 2 hours, but Diesel made it in an hour and 45 minutes. The desert highway was mostly empty, just him and the occasional truck driver hauling goods between cities. He kept the radio off, using the quiet time to convince himself that he would just do a quick drive-by, see that everything was normal, and then drive back to his hotel. But as he got closer to downtown Phoenix, the familiar excitement began building in his chest. The same feeling he used to get as a kid when he was coming home from visiting relatives, eager to see his own neighborhood again, to sleep in his own bed. Fuego's Kitchen sat on a corner lot, its warm yellow exterior and hand-painted, sign visible from 2 blocks away. Diesel had spent weeks choosing that particular shade of yellow, testing different colors until he found one that looked inviting during the day and cozy under the streetlights at night. He parked across the street, trying to be inconspicuous. The dinner rush was in full swing, and through the large windows he could see nearly every table occupied. Families with children, couples sharing appetizers, groups of friends laughing over shared plates. The scene that had lived in his imagination for so many years, now playing out in real life every single day. Everything looked perfect. Servers moved efficiently between tables. The kitchen appeared to be keeping up with orders, and he could see Patricia behind the host stand, greeting customers with the warm smile that had charmed hundreds of visitors over the past few years. So why did he still feel like something was wrong? Diesel sat in his car for 20 minutes, watching his restaurant like a detective on a stakeout. He felt slightly ridiculous, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to be here. Finally, he made a decision. Instead of going through the front door and causing a scene among the staff and customers, he would slip in through the back entrance just to check on things quietly. The back alley behind Fuego's Kitchen was dimly lit, smelling faintly of cooking oil and garbage from the dumpster. Diesel had walked this path thousands of times, usually carrying boxes of supplies or taking phone calls from vendors. He knew exactly which step creaked, where the pavement was uneven, how to jiggle the back door handle just right so it wouldn't stick. The kitchen was busy but organized, exactly as he had trained his staff to maintain it. The evening prep cook, Tony, was focused on his station, and the dishwasher was moving through the endless cycle of plates and glasses. No one noticed. Diesel, as he slipped through the back hallway past the office and the employee break room, toward the dining area. That's when he heard it. A sound that stopped him cold and made his stomach drop. Someone was crying. Not the frustrated tears of a busy evening or the quick sniffle of someone dealing with difficult customers. This was deep, heartbroken sobbing coming from the storage room near the walk-in freezer. All of Diesel's instincts about something being wrong suddenly made sense. This was why he had driven 2 hours in the dark, why he couldn't enjoy his vacation, why something had been pulling him back home. Someone in his restaurant family was hurting, and he had almost missed it. Diesel froze in the hallway, his hand still on the door frame. The crying was coming from the storage room, muffled but unmistakable. In 3 years of running Fuego's Kitchen, he had heard plenty of tears. Servers frustrated with difficult customers, kitchen staff overwhelmed during busy nights, even his own quiet moments of stress when the bills seemed impossible to pay. But this was different. This was the sound of someone whose heart was breaking. He took a careful step closer to the storage room, his restaurant training kicking in automatically. Move quietly. Don't startle anyone. Assess the situation before acting. The door was slightly open, just enough for him to see a figure sitting on one of the large supply crates near the back wall. Even in the dim light, Diesel recognized her immediately. Maria Santos. The recognition hit him like a punch to the stomach. Maria had been with Fuego's Kitchen since the very beginning, back when the restaurant was just a crazy dream and a pile of construction debris. She had been his third hire, right after Patricia, and Tony the prep cook. Diesel remembered her interview clearly because it had been unlike any other he had conducted. Most people who applied for server positions were young, looking for temporary work while they pursued other dreams. College students, aspiring actors, people between careers. Maria had been different. She was 34, a single mother, and when Diesel asked her why she wanted to work at a brand new restaurant with no track record, she had looked him straight in the eye and said, "Because I need a place where I can build something, not just pass time." That honesty had impressed him. During her first week, while other servers were still learning the menu and figuring out the computer system, Maria had already memorized every regular customer's preferences and was suggesting ways to improve the lunch service flow. She stayed late to help with closing duties without being asked, picked up extra shifts when other servers called in sick, and never once complained about difficult customers or long hours. But more than her work ethic, Maria had brought something special to Fuego's Kitchen. She had a way with people that couldn't be taught. Families with young children relaxed when she approached their table because she understood the chaos of keeping kids happy while trying to enjoy a meal. Elderly customers appreciated how she took time to chat without making them feel rushed. First-time visitors left feeling like they had discovered a hidden gem, thanks to Maria's genuine enthusiasm for the restaurant and its food. Diesel had watched her handle every situation with grace and professionalism. The businessmen who complained loudly about waiting 10 minutes for his lunch, the teenagers who tried to dine and dash, the confused tourist who insisted on ordering items from a completely different restaurant's menu that he had seen online. Maria managed them all with patience and humor. She had become more than just an employee. She was part of the heart of Fuego's Kitchen, one of the people who made the restaurant feel like a home rather than just a business. Other staff members looked up to her, customers asked for her by name, and Diesel had come to rely on her steady presence during the daily controlled chaos of restaurant service. So hearing Maria cry in the storage room felt like discovering that something fundamental was wrong with his world. Diesel stood in the hallway, torn between his respect for privacy and his genuine concern. Maria was a private person by nature. In all the time she had worked for him, she had rarely shared details about her personal life. He knew she had a young son because she had mentioned needing to arrange childcare for her shifts, but she never talked about the boy's father or her living situation. She never brought personal drama to work, never asked for special favors, and never seemed to let outside problems affect her performance. That privacy was one of the things Diesel respected about her. Some employees treated the workplace like their personal therapy session, sharing every detail of their relationships, family problems, and financial struggles. Maria kept her personal and professional lives separate, which made her one of the most reliable members of his team. But it also meant that if she was crying at work, something must be seriously wrong. Through the crack in the door, Diesel could see Maria more clearly now. She was still wearing her server's apron, which meant she was probably on a break between tables. Her dark hair was pulled back in the neat ponytail she always wore during shifts, but her shoulders were shaking with quiet sobs. She had her face buried in her hands, trying to muffle the sound. Diesel's protective instincts were warring with his respect for boundaries. As Maria's boss, he felt responsible for the well-being of his employees. Fuego's Kitchen wasn't just a business to him, it was a family. When Tony's car had broken down last winter, Diesel had given him rides to work for 2 weeks until he could afford repairs. When Patricia's grandson had been born prematurely, Diesel had covered her shifts personally so she could spend time at the hospital. That's how he tried to run his restaurant, like a place where people took care of each other. But as much as he cared about his employees, Diesel also understood the importance of privacy and dignity. Some problems were too personal, too painful to share with a boss, no matter how caring that boss tried to be. Maria might be embarrassed if she knew he had seen her crying. She might feel like her professional image was compromised, or worse, like her job was at risk because she had shown vulnerability at work. While Diesel wrestled with his decision, he found himself really looking at Maria for the first time in weeks. He had been so focused on the vacation planning and daily operations that he hadn't been paying attention to the subtle signs that something might be wrong. Now, thinking back, he realized there had been clues. Maria had been looking tired lately, more tired than the usual exhaustion that came with restaurant work. She had been checking her phone more frequently during breaks, something she rarely used to do. A few times he had caught her staring out the window during quiet moments, her expression distant and worried. She had also been picking up extra shifts, working more hours than usual, even though she had never seemed to struggle financially before. All of these small details suddenly formed a picture that Diesel should have noticed sooner. Maria was dealing with something difficult, something that was affecting her deeply, and she had been struggling alone while maintaining her professional facade. The crying intensified for a moment, and Diesel heard Maria whisper something to herself, though he couldn't make out the words. The pain in her voice was unmistakable, and it made his chest tight with worry and frustration. Frustration at himself for not noticing sooner, frustration at whatever situation was causing her this much distress, and frustration at not knowing how to help. In the distance, he could hear the normal sounds of the dinner service continuing. Plates clattering in the kitchen, Patricia's voice greeting customers at the front, the low buzz of conversation from the dining room. His restaurant was operating perfectly, just as he had trained his staff to manage things. But here in the storage room, one of his most valued employees was falling apart, and he had been 2 hours away enjoying a vacation. Diesel made his decision. He couldn't stand by and watch someone he cared about suffer in silence, regardless of the potential awkwardness. Maria wasn't just his employee, she was family. And family didn't let family hurt alone, even when it was uncomfortable, even when it meant crossing professional boundaries. He took a deep breath, stepped forward, and gently knocked on the storage room door. The gentle knock on the storage room door made Maria jump like she had been struck by lightning. Her head snapped up, and Diesel could see the panic flash across her tear-streaked face as she realized someone had discovered her private moment of breakdown. She frantically wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to erase any evidence of crying. But it was too late. The damage was already visible in her red, swollen eyes and the way her hands trembled as she tried to compose herself. "Maria?" Diesel's voice was soft, careful. "It's me. Are you okay?" The question hung in the air between them like a bridge neither of them was sure how to cross. For a moment, Maria just stared at him, her mouth opening and closing as if she were trying to find words that simply didn't exist. Diesel could see her mind racing, probably calculating how much trouble she might be in for crying at work, wondering how long he had been standing there, trying to figure out how to explain herself. "I'm fine," she said finally, but her voice cracked on the words, betraying her completely. "I'm sorry, Mr. Rodriguez, I needed a minute. I'll get back to my tables right now." She stood up quickly, smoothing down her apron and trying to move past him toward the door. But Diesel didn't step aside. Instead, he closed the storage room door behind him and leaned against it, not trapping her, but making it clear that this conversation wasn't over. "Maria, please," he said. "You're not in trouble. I'm not here as your boss right now. I'm here as someone who cares about you." The kindness in his voice seemed to break something inside her. Her carefully constructed, professional facade crumbled, and fresh tears started flowing down her cheeks. She sank back down onto the supply crate, covering her face with her hands. "I'm so embarrassed," she whispered. "I never cry at work. Never. I don't bring my personal problems here. That's not who I am." Diesel pulled over another crate and sat down facing her, close enough to talk quietly but far enough to give her space. "Maria, in the 3 years you've worked here, you've never asked for a single favor. You've never called in sick unless you were practically dying. You've stayed late, worked doubles, covered for other people, and handled every difficult situation with more grace than anyone has a right to expect. If you're crying, it's not because you're weak. It's because something is seriously wrong." Maria looked up at him through her tears, and Diesel could see years of carefully maintained strength beginning to crack. She had been carrying something heavy, something that was slowly crushing her, and she had been doing it alone. "I don't know what to do," she said, so quietly he had to lean forward to hear her. "I've been trying to handle everything myself, but I can't. I can't keep up anymore." "Tell me," Diesel said simply. "Whatever it is, maybe we can figure it out together." Maria took a shaky breath, wiping her nose with a napkin from her apron pocket. For several long moments, she seemed to be gathering courage, deciding whether to trust him with whatever had been eating her alive. "It's Miguel," she said finally. "My son." Diesel nodded. He had heard Miguel's name mentioned occasionally over the years, usually when Maria was arranging her schedule, around school events or childcare. but she had never shared many details about her home life. "He's 8 years old," Maria continued, her voice stronger now that she had started talking. "The sweetest, smartest little boy you could ever meet. He loves school, especially science class. He wants to be a doctor when he grows up. Says he's going to help sick people feel better." A small smile crossed her face as she talked about Miguel, but it quickly faded as the reality of their situation returned. 3 months ago, Miguel started getting sick a lot. At first, I thought it was just normal kid stuff, colds, maybe something going around at school. But it kept getting worse. He was tired all the time, getting bruises that wouldn't heal, losing weight even though he was eating normally. Diesel felt his stomach tighten as he listened. As someone who had grown up with a single mother, he understood the unique terror that came with a child's unexplained illness when you were the only person responsible for their well-being. "I took him to our regular doctor, and she ran some tests," Maria continued. "The results were scary. Miguel has something called autoimmune thrombocytopenia. His body is attacking his own blood platelets, which makes it hard for his blood to clot properly. That's why he bruises so easily, why he's always tired." She paused, taking another shaky breath before continuing. The doctor explained that it's treatable, but it requires ongoing medication and regular monitoring. Some kids grow out of it, but others need treatment for years. The medicine he needs costs over $800 a month, and that's with our insurance covering part of it. Diesel's heart sank as he began to understand the scope of Maria's problem. $800 a month was more than many people paid for rent. For a single mother working in a restaurant, even with the decent wages he tried to pay his staff, that kind of ongoing expense would be devastating. "The insurance through the restaurant helps," Maria said quickly, as if she were worried about criticizing the benefits package. "It's better than a lot of places offer, but there's still so much that isn't covered. Specialist visits, additional tests, the really expensive medications if the first treatment doesn't work." She pulled out her phone and showed Diesel a photo of a young boy with dark hair and bright eyes, grinning at the camera with a gap-toothed smile. "This is Miguel last month, on a good day. But he's been having more bad days lately. Days when he can barely get out of bed, when even walking to the bathroom makes him exhausted." Diesel looked at the photo and saw something that made his chest tight. The boy looked like he could be his own nephew, could be any of the children he served in his restaurant every day. This wasn't some abstract problem. This was a real child who needed help. "The doctor says Miguel needs to see a specialist in California," Maria continued. "Someone who deals specifically with pediatric autoimmune disorders. The appointment would cost $3,000, and that's just for the consultation. If he needs specialized treatment, it could cost tens of thousands more." She laughed bitterly, wiping at her eyes again. $3,000 might as well be $3 million for someone like me. I've been working double shifts, picking up catering jobs on my days off, trying to save every penny. But every month there are more medical bills, more co-pays, more expenses I never expected. Diesel realized now why Maria had been looking so exhausted, why she had been working so many extra hours, why she had seemed distracted and worried. She had been fighting a battle that she couldn't win alone, trying to be everything for her son while maintaining the professional composure that kept food on their table. "I got another bill today," Maria said, her voice breaking again. $3,200 for Miguel's last hospital stay when his platelet count dropped dangerously low. "I have no idea how I'm going to pay it, and the insurance company is saying they might not cover the California specialist because it's out of network and experimental." She stood up abruptly, pacing the small storage room like a caged animal. "I've been thinking, maybe I need to find a different job, something with better insurance, better benefits. I know there are companies out there with more comprehensive health plans. I hate the idea of leaving Fuegos, but Miguel has to come first." The words hit Diesel like a physical blow. The thought of losing Maria, of her feeling forced to leave the restaurant family they had built together, was almost unbearable. But worse was the image of her struggling alone with this impossible situation, too proud to ask for help, slowly drowning under the weight of circumstances beyond her control. "I was crying because I love this job," Maria said, turning to face him with tears streaming down her cheeks. "I love working here. I love our customers. I love feeling like I'm part of something special, but I love my son more. And if I have to choose between my happiness and his health, there's no choice at all. Diesel felt like someone had punched him in the stomach and stolen all the air from his lungs. He stared at Maria as her words echoed. In his mind, if I have to choose between my happiness and his health, there's no choice at all. The strength in her voice when she said it, the absolute certainty that she would sacrifice everything for her son, reminded him of someone else he had known long ago. His mother. Diesel had been 8 years old when his father walked out, leaving behind nothing but empty beer bottles and a pile of unpaid bills. His mother, Carmen, had been working as a house cleaner at the time, making barely enough to keep their small apartment. When his father disappeared, she suddenly became the sole provider for 2 young children with no warning and no backup plan. Hanning remembered watching his mother count coins on the kitchen table every night, sorting them into little piles for rent, food, utilities, and school supplies. She never let him or his sister see her cry, but sometimes he would wake up in the middle of the night and hear muffled sobs coming from her bedroom. Carmen would get up at 4 a.m. to clean office buildings before her regular job, then work at a diner until late at night, coming home exhausted and smelling like cleaning chemicals and coffee. When Diesel got sick with pneumonia at age 10, he remembered his mother pacing the hospital hallway, arguing with insurance representatives, on a payphone. The medical bills had nearly destroyed them financially. Carmen had to take on a 3rd job working weekends at a local restaurant, just to pay for his treatment. Even as a child, Diesel had understood that his mother was drowning, sacrificing her own health and happiness to keep him and his sister safe. The restaurant where his mother worked those weekends had been owned by an older man named Don Felipe, a quiet guy who never said much but seemed to notice everything. When Diesel's mother had broken down crying in the kitchen one evening, overwhelmed by the medical bills and exhaustion, Don Felipe had quietly arranged for her to receive bonus pay for working holidays. Later, Diesel learned that there had been no holiday bonuses for other employees. Don Felipe had simply decided to help a struggling mother without making her feel like charity. That small act of kindness had changed everything for Diesel's family. The extra money had helped them catch up on bills and get back on their feet. More importantly, it had shown Diesel what it meant to take care of people, what it looked like when someone with power chose to use it for good instead of just profit. Now, 25 years later, Diesel was in Don Felipe's position. He had the power to help, but he also had responsibilities to consider. After Maria returned to her tables, insisting she was fine and could finish her shift, Diesel sat alone in his office, staring at the wall. The restaurant was still busy with the dinner crowd, but he could barely concentrate on the normal sounds of service. All he could think about was Miguel's gap-toothed smile in that photo and Maria's quiet desperation. Diesel pulled out his laptop and started researching autoimmune thrombocytopenia. The medical websites were full of complicated terminology, but the basic facts were clear. It was a serious condition that required ongoing treatment, early intervention was crucial, and children with access to specialized care had much better outcomes than those who didn't. He found information about the California specialist Maria had mentioned. Dr. Lisa Chen ran one of the most respected pediatric autoimmune clinics on the West Coast. Her patient reviews were incredible, full of stories from families whose children had gone from severe illness to normal, healthy lives under her care. But the cost was exactly what Maria had said, $3,000 just for the initial consultation, with treatment plans that could run into tens of thousands, depending on the child's needs. Diesel leaned back in his chair and looked around. His office. The walls were covered with photos from Fuego's Kitchen's early days, pictures of the staff painting the dining room, the grand opening celebration, regular customers celebrating birthdays and anniversaries. In almost every photo, Maria was somewhere in the frame, usually smiling, often helping someone else. She had been there for every milestone, every crisis, every triumph. When the health inspector had shown up unexpectedly during their 2nd month, and found problems with the walk-in freezer temperature, Maria had worked with Diesel until 2 in the morning, helping him reorganize the entire food storage system. When the restaurant's first terrible online review had been posted by a customer upset about waiting for a table, Maria had personally reached out to regular customers, asking them to share their positive experiences online. She had never asked for anything in return, never requested special treatment, never expected extra consideration because of her loyalty. She had simply shown up every day and given her best, trusting that Diesel would treat her fairly and take care of his employees. Now she was planning to leave, not because she wanted to, but because she felt like she had no other choice. Diesel opened his accounting software and started looking at the restaurant's finances. Fuego's Kitchen was doing well, better than he had dared to hope when he first opened. They were profitable, building a solid customer base, and even setting aside money for future expansion. But they weren't rolling in cash. Every dollar had a purpose, whether it was for ingredients, payroll, equipment maintenance, or the small emergency fund he had been slowly building. $3,000 for Miguel's specialist appointment would be a significant expense, but not impossible. The restaurant could absorb that cost without serious difficulty. But if Miguel needed ongoing specialized treatment, the cost could quickly spiral into amounts that would threaten the business's stability. Diesel thought about his other employees. Tony had been talking about proposing to his girlfriend and was saving for an engagement ring. Patricia's husband had been laid off recently, making her income even more crucial for their household. The newer servers were mostly college students working their way through school. Everyone was depending on Fuego's Kitchen for their livelihood. As a business owner, Diesel had to think about more than just Maria's situation. Every decision he made affected everyone who worked for him, everyone who depended on the restaurant, for their income. If he made choices that hurt the business's financial stability, he could end up unable to help anyone. But as he sat there calculating numbers and weighing options, Diesel kept coming back to the same thought. What was the point of building a successful business if the people who helped create that success couldn't benefit from it when they needed help most? He remembered a conversation he had with his uncle Roberto, the man who had loaned him money to open the restaurant. Roberto had worked construction for 40 years, building houses for wealthy families while living in a tiny apartment himself. When Diesel had asked him why he was willing to risk his savings on a restaurant venture, Roberto had said something that stuck with him. "Money is just a tool, nephew. The question is whether you use it to build walls or bridges." Diesel pulled out his phone and started making calls. First, he called his accountant, waking the poor man up at home to discuss the restaurant's cash flow and emergency fund options. Then he called his uncle Roberto, knowing that his uncle's construction connections might have information about medical financing or assistance programs. His third call was to Dr. Chen's office in California. It was after hours, but he left a detailed voicemail explaining Miguel's situation and asking about payment plans or reduced cost options for families facing financial hardship. By midnight, Diesel had a plan forming in his mind. It wasn't perfect, and it would require some financial juggling, but it was possible. The restaurant had enough in its emergency fund to cover the specialist consultation, and if Miguel needed ongoing treatment, they could explore longer-term financing options. But more than the money, Diesel realized he needed to address the bigger problem. Maria felt like she had to handle this crisis alone. She was so used to being strong, so accustomed to taking care of everyone else, that she couldn't see that her restaurant family wanted to take care of her too. The next morning, Diesel arrived at Fuego's Kitchen early, before the breakfast prep began. He had spent most of the night thinking, planning, and researching. His decision was made, but now he had to figure out how to present it to Maria without making her feel like charity or pity was involved. This wasn't about charity. This was about family, taking care of family, about using success to lift up the people who had helped create that success. Maria had invested 3 years of her life in making Fuego's Kitchen special. Now it was time for Fuego's Kitchen to invest in her. The next morning arrived gray and drizzly, one of those Phoenix days when the desert sky looked more like Seattle than Arizona. Diesel had been at the restaurant since 5:30, drinking his third cup of coffee and reviewing the notes he had scribbled during his sleepless night. His desk was covered with printouts from medical websites, insurance forms, and financial calculations that looked like the work of someone slowly losing his mind. But he wasn't losing his mind. For the first time in days, everything felt clear. At 9 o'clock, just before the lunch prep began, Diesel walked out to the dining room where Maria was setting up tables for the day. She was moving through her routine with the same professional efficiency as always, but Diesel could see the exhaustion in her movements, the way she paused occasionally as if gathering strength for the next task. "Maria," he called softly. "Could I see you in my office for a few minutes?" The color drained from her face instantly. In the restaurant business, being called into the boss's office usually meant one of two things. You were getting promoted or you were getting fired. Given yesterday's breakdown in the storage room, Maria clearly expected the worst. "Of course, Mr. Rodriguez," she said, her voice carefully neutral. She followed him across the dining room, her steps measured and cautious like someone walking toward their execution. Diesel's office was small and cluttered, filled with the controlled chaos of running a busy restaurant. Recipe cards were pinned to a bulletin board, vendor invoices were stacked on the filing cabinet, and photos of happy customers covered every available wall space. It was the kind of office that showed someone who cared more about the work than appearances. Maria sat in the chair across from his desk, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Diesel could see her preparing herself for bad news, building up the emotional walls that would help her get through whatever was coming next. "I want to start by saying that you're not in any trouble," Diesel began, but Maria's expression didn't relax. If anything, she looked more worried. "I know I shouldn't have been crying at work yesterday," she said quickly. "It won't happen again. I promise I can keep my personal problems separate from my job. I've never let anything affect my work before, and I won't let it happen again." Diesel held up his hand to stop her. "Maria, please. That's not why you're here. Actually, I need to apologize to you." Now she looked completely confused. "Apologize? For what?" "For not noticing sooner that you were struggling. For not creating an environment where you felt comfortable asking for help when you needed it. For making you feel like you had to carry this burden alone." Maria stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. "Mr. Rodriguez, I don't understand. You've been nothing but fair to me. This isn't your responsibility." "That's where you're wrong," Diesel said, leaning forward. "When I hired you 3 years ago, I didn't just hire a server. I hired someone who became part of the foundation of this restaurant, someone who stayed late when we were short-staffed, who covered shifts when other people called in sick, who made every customer feel like family. You helped build Fuego's Kitchen into what it is today. That makes your well-being my responsibility, whether you want it to be or not." He pulled out a folder from his desk drawer and set it in front of her. Maria looked at it suspiciously, as if it might explode. "I spent most of last night making some phone calls and doing research," Diesel continued. "I found out some interesting things about Miguel's condition and the specialist in California." Maria's eyes widened. She hadn't expected him to remember the details from their emotional conversation, much less act on them. "Dr. Chen's office called me back this morning," Diesel said. "I explained Miguel's situation, and they have a program for families facing financial hardship. They can reduce the consultation fee from $3,000 to $1,500 if we can provide proof of income and medical necessity." "Mr. Rodriguez, I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking, I'm telling." Diesel opened the folder and pulled out a check that was already filled out. "This covers the consultation with Dr. Chen, plus travel expenses for you and Miguel to get to California." Maria stared at the check like it was a hallucination. Her hands were shaking as she reached for it, then pulled back as if it might burn her. "I can't accept this," she whispered. "This is too much. I could never pay you back." "Who said anything about paying me back?" Diesel pulled out another document from the folder. "I also had some conversations with our insurance company and our accountant. Starting next month, we're upgrading our health insurance plan for all employees. The new plan has better coverage for specialist care and prescription medications." Maria's mouth fell open. "You're changing the entire restaurant's insurance plan?" "It was something I should have done sooner anyway," Diesel said. A business is only as strong as the people who work for it. If our people are struggling with health problems, then the business is struggling too. He pulled out one more document, this one official looking with the restaurant's letterhead. And there's something else. I've been thinking about promoting you to assistant manager for a while now. The restaurant is growing, and I need someone I can trust to help with the daily operations. Maria read the promotion letter, her eyes growing wider with each line. The new salary was nearly double what she had been making as a server. The promotion comes with additional responsibilities, Diesel continued. You'd be helping with staff training, inventory management, customer relations, but it also comes with a salary instead of hourly wages, which means more stable income and better benefits. Tears were streaming down Maria's face now, but these were completely different from the desperate sobs Diesel had witnessed yesterday. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of hope returning to a situation that had seemed hopeless. I don't know what to say, she managed through her tears. Say you'll take Miguel to see Dr. Chen next week, Diesel said simply. Say you'll let your restaurant family help you through this. Maria stood up suddenly and walked to the window, looking out at the dining room where the morning prep crew was getting ready for another busy day. Diesel could see her shoulders shaking, but she was trying to compose herself. Why are you doing this? She asked without turning around. Really? Why? Diesel was quiet for a moment, thinking about his mother working 3 jobs, about Don Felipe's quiet kindness, about all the nights he had lain awake as a child listening to his mother cry and wishing someone would help her. When I was 8 years old, I got really sick, he said finally. My mother was working multiple jobs just to keep us afloat, and the medical bills nearly destroyed us financially. There was a restaurant owner who helped us when we had nowhere else to turn. He never made a big deal about it, never made my mother feel like charity. He just quietly made sure we had what we needed to get through. Maria turned to face him, tears still flowing. He taught me something important, Diesel continued. Success doesn't mean anything if you can't use it to help the people who helped you succeed. You've given 3 years of your life to making this restaurant special. You've worked when you were sick, stayed late when we needed help, made our customers feel welcome and valued. Miguel getting the care he needs isn't charity, Maria. It's family taking care of family. Maria walked back to the desk and picked up the check with trembling hands. I will pay you back, she said firmly. Every penny. I don't know how long it will take, but I will pay you back. Diesel smiled. I know you will because that's who you are. But right now just focus on getting Miguel healthy. Everything else can wait. 6 months later, Miguel was in complete remission. The specialist in California had put him on a treatment plan that was working better than anyone had dared to hope. He was back to being a normal 8-year-old playing soccer, excelling in school, and talking about becoming a doctor so he could help other kids who got sick. Maria had grown into her role as assistant manager like she was born for it. She was handling vendor relationships, training new staff, and helping Diesel plan for the restaurant's expansion. The increased salary and better insurance had eliminated the financial stress that had been crushing her, and she was able to focus on her work and her son without the constant worry about money. But perhaps the most important change was in the culture of Fuego's Kitchen itself. Word had spread among the staff about what Diesel had done for Maria and Miguel. Not the details, which remained private, but the general understanding that this was a place where people took care of each other. Employees started looking out for one another in new ways, offering help before it was asked for, creating the kind of workplace where people wanted to build careers rather than just collect paychecks. Fuego's Kitchen had always served good food. Now it was also serving as an example of what happened when success was shared, when businesses remembered that their most valuable assets walked on 2 legs and had families and dreams, and sometimes needed help carrying life's heavier burdens, and, late at night when Diesel was closing up the restaurant, he would sometimes think about Don Felipe and hope that somewhere his old family friend was smiling, knowing that his small act of kindness had grown into something larger, something that would keep growing as long as people remembered that taking care of each other was the most important ingredient in any recipe for success.